This podcast is rated E for explicit. Dear love interest, I haven't been the same since what was a flicker is now a roaring flame. A force I felt coming before the atmosphere had changed. Dear love interest, before I knew your name, I asked God, what type of love must we possess within to fuel an eternal flame? Is it the flicker of pragma that burns low yet steady like a pilot light? Or is it the intense heat of eros that takes our passion to new planes until it burns out and we must return to what remains? Dear love interest, with your presence some answers came. It takes the type of love that flickers steadily and light, that never burns too hot or too bright, yet holds enough power to ignite. The type of love that burns passionately and bright, that takes our breath away at night, and after the delight, lets us breathe again. Dear love interest, I would have never imagined this, that pragma and eros can coexist to create an experience of love so full of gifts. Dear love interest, will you remember this? You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings. Looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens. Having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation. Experiences of love has shaped us, what it gave and what it cost us. Too many conversations about relationship issues have been simplistic. I wanted to have the type of conversations that more accurately speak to the issues that go unsaid in a way that's more realistic. So I called upon the brilliant minds of the board. Aaron.
I have learned how to communicate love is through fucking.
Nick.
That could really be some bullshit. And then, listen, the way these hands set up, okay, what you're not gonna do, period.
Gary.
We started off so good. It feels good. It's good. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna try to see if we can make this work.
Calvin.
If I went in thinking you're getting to know me and then we might get to fuck, and it doesn't happen, I might be a little bit more upset.
Their wisdom will be your reward. We started our conversation after Nick read a passage that explains the kind of love Toni Morrison referenced in her novel, The Bluest Eye. She explains that love is never any better than the lover. Wicked people love wickedly. Violent people love violently. Stupid people love stupidly. In other words, the brand of love ain't gonna change after you bought it. She continues in saying that when love is born of corruption, there is no gift for the beloved.
In fact, described in these terms, then there is still some good in him, however deformed. We are left to hope for a kind of love that is genuine, that is a genuine gift for the beloved.
So you understand why I'm fucked up?
Can I say something though? Just from listening to that passage, just the last part of that, I feel like it just reminds me of the scenario in the movie The Wound, where there is some level of inherent love, but what is it, and how good is it based on the people involved, right? You know, because those situations weren't what I would consider to be loving, but based on what I just heard from that passage, I'm starting to wonder, really, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me of Boomerang. I know you guys probably remember that at the end when Halle Berry says, "You can't love me the way in which I deserve to be loved." It speaks so many volumes to the layers of love that, and the perspectives of love that we all have.
This kind of makes me think about intent versus impact as well.
Absolutely.
And how the intent for love, or the intent to show, to demonstrate love, could be genuine, could be authentic, could come from a very real place. However, the impact of that could be totally different than the intent. And so then who gets to determine which takes precedent, one over the other? It becomes an interesting conversation.
I know a lot of people talk about, they need closure. They need to know why he ghosted me, why, she didn't show up and all this kind of stuff. And if you just understood the love is only as good, as the lover, you could just let that go. Because sometimes people can't give you that, right? They can't, they don't have it to give you in terms of this closure.
Can we talk about the quote from Oprah, right? When you're talking about the fact that she didn't even understand, that she didn't know.
What Calvin is referencing here is a story Oprah told when we went to see her in Atlanta, which was one of the stops for her 2020 Vision Tour. It was a story about her not understanding what it meant to be tucked in as a child because it was an experience that she didn't have. Consequently, when she was asked to tuck in her character's daughter in a scene while filming the movie Beloved, she simply did not have that personal experience to draw from.
So how can the person who's not doing enough, not doing it right or whatever, how can they ever know that they're not?
Right.
Where does that education come?
Yeah.
Because I like Nick's point about, the intent versus impact, because they may have intended all along to do the right things, even though they may not have had the right impact.
And she was talking about it in the context of her mom and bringing some sort of closure, I think, to that relationship, and finding something in her heart to give her that was authentic and real, to let her perhaps go in peace, and as much as she could, and not wanting to rush it or be rushed about it, although and so I think that whole idea of forgiveness about the way it was versus how it could have been, like your parents who are inherently abusive, but not realizing that the way they're choosing to love this child is also perhaps destroying them in another way. We all have these varied experiences with family members and stuff like that. It doesn't make the pain, any less. But as adults, coming to terms with forgiving them and letting go what those things were, I think it helps to understand that they did what they could, or that they intended to do, even if it wasn't received in that way.
But this only comes, I think, from somebody kind of reflecting, because people love each other. If somebody's a violent person, they keep loving you violently. Most of the times they're not reflecting on themselves. They're just acting out on what they think is the best way. So what we're talking about is having somebody self-realize, okay, what I've been doing, the pattern I've been doing is not healthy for me. But a lot of times people just continue in what that is, and not self-realizing it's not good.
Yeah.
Not loving you healthy.
for me, that kind of brings up this thinking of like what's been modeled for you.
Right.
Because if that is what love looking like has been modeled for you, that's the only grid that you have for thinking about love. That's the only grid that you have for love. You literally don't even know how to think differently about love, which then informs the behaviors about how you show love to people. And so without there being some sort of exposure to or awareness of, maybe there's a different way in which love can show up. Maybe there's a different way in which love can look. Maybe me demonstrating or showing love doesn't have to look like what was modeled for me. But a lot of times we don't recognize that there is a different way.
Right.
Because that's just what it is we do, what it is we know. We don't interrogate it. We don't think critically about it. We don't ask questions of it. We don't get curious about why we do things the way that we do them. And until that happens, it's like it can be stuck.
But I want to go back to the question I asked along that same line. Where does that education come in? How do you change that? What that model looks like? Because as we talked about before, people may not be aware that they're doing anything wrong or not doing the right things. How do we educate them? Or how does a person get educated to do the right thing?
So some of the part of this stuff we're talking about too is supposed to start from parents, supposedly.
Yeah, absolutely.
If your parents' situation is wounded and it's bad, that's a starting point.
Yeah.
It's going to create a bad situation for you. So you're supposed to be in a situation, whether it's a single parent home or a 2-parent home, that family dynamic should be a loving relationship that you see and that you want to demonstrate. But if you're not getting it from home, I don't know where you go. Sometimes people go and find it.
Yeah.
And in healthy places to find it.
Love is a learned behavior. And that's one of the things that we probably should make sure that we're attuning to is the idea that it's a love. It's a learned behavior. So with that, you are only as good as the model that you have. Just like you said, Gary, you're only as good as the model that you have. When we're looking at, I guess, more of a socially conscious way of looking at love, you can't expect someone to do something different if they've never been taught how to do so.
So we, in preparation for this show, I had put out some feelers to the audience to get some ideas about what people wanted to have discussed and top of mind. And one of the things were deal breakers, and in terms of what your deal breakers are when you come into a relationship type situation. But in thinking about what you guys just said, I was thinking, sometimes the deal breaker, I know a lot of times when people talk about deal breakers, they talk about a lot of superficial things and a lot of things that are assessed quickly, or early. But some of the things that I think are really fundamentally deal breakers is how somebody sees love. And also maybe not even in terms of how they see it, but how you experience it from how they see it, because you're going to be the person who is receiving the effects of what they believe about it. And that might not be something that they can articulate to you.
Yes.
But it's certainly going to be something that you're going to feel the hell out of. So that, if you want to talk about a deal breaker, that's a fundamental fucking deal breaker.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think you bring up a really important point, though, because it's about the meaning that gets made of that too. Like, it's what's done, but then it doesn't stop there. It's about how you interpret, how you make meaning of whatever thing that is. So by the time it gets to you and you filter it through all of your lenses and all your processes, it could be something completely different. And so, but I love that you kind of highlighted that point. I just wanted to really, really highlight it.
Thank you.
It's a great point.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, this is from my experience. Such a profound story. So I remember growing up, and I saw my dad opening up the door for my mom, and I'm like, "This is beautiful. This is what love is." I remember trying that shit, and I did it, to someone who said to me, you don't have to open up the door for me. I don't like that. I'm my own independent person. I can open up the door if I want to.
Oops.
That honestly scarred me. And I'm like, man, am I doing something wrong? Like, really, what's going on? But as you stated, Nick, the lens is completely different. The lens was completely different for that individual as opposed to how I was brought up and what I know love to be.
That's interesting.
And so I'm just thinking about that when you're saying what you know love to be, but what you're describing to me isn't the love. It's just it's like a demonstration of it. You know, something that shows like a symbol of the fact that I love you. This is why I'm doing this.
And that person did not receive that demonstration of love in that way, the way that you intended it.
Right.
So you could literally have the same thing happen and it'd be two completely different experiences. And think about how relationship issues that happens when there's argument, there's the same thing, but two different perspectives, two different experiences, informing those perspectives could be, and two potentially different experiences altogether, even though it's the same event. And so how do you communicate even honestly around that? But yeah, great point.
But I'm going to come back again to how does that education happen? Is it my responsibility to tell you this? Is it something that we learn together? Because you're going to have back and forth. There are going to be experiences that I'm going to want from you and you might want from me, but how do we make that happen together?
I think you have to be really intentional about wanting to be on the same page as your partner in terms of what those things look like, your love languages, your, all of that stuff. I think there's a whole book about love languages, isn't there?
Yeah.
Gary Chapman.
So along those lines, if we're intentional, right? Yeah, we've already talked about, not having the same love expression being a deal breaker. How can those both be the same? I mean, if it's a deal breaker, you're not going to be intentional about trying to fix it.
Well, I'm curious, what level are you in terms of your love experience? Are you at the beginning of the dating phase? Are you
maybe that's the answer? Is that whatever phase you're at will determine how much effort you actually put in?
Well, a lot of the stuff start on the superficial level. So people start off on the superficial level sometimes in relationships, and then they progress deeper into that level. So some people feel that they've put so much into starting this off, even though I feel that we have some issues here, but we started off so good. It feels good. It's good. I'm going to try to see if we can make this work.
Well, I read somebody's bio on Instagram today, and it says, fuck first and then get to know you later.
Oof.
And that's how they approach,
Okay. So look, I'm gonna say this, and it may not necessarily be the response you expect. I respect that because it tells me up front what I can expect from you.
Absolutely.
Right? And it also means that there's no pretense about what we're going into, right? So if I know that this might end after the fuck phase, I'm cool. But if I went in thinking you're getting to know me and then we might get to fuck and it doesn't happen, I might be a little bit more upset.
Yes, and also be with somebody with that same mentality. Be with somebody else who thinks the same, who's cool. Because you try to do that with somebody who feels differently, and it's, again, same experience, but two different meanings for that. That could really be some bullshit. And then, listen, the way these hands set up, okay. But so what you're not gonna do?
I think that's the. I think that's a philosophy for a lot of people, but I'm just impressed by the fact that it's written.
Right.
Well, it's honest. But so back to your question, at what point of not just maturity, but at what point of love are you in? If you're saying, if that mentality is fuck, and then I'm going to get to know you, like at what point, at what point are you at?
Well, no, go ahead.
And that's still formulaic too. Like it's not even open to where like you could be open to something unfolding in the way that it will. I could
absolutely.
It's as formulaic as like well, let's get to know each other and then let's see. Like, it's just formula. And I'm like, why can we not just allow this to be what it is and let it, and to unfold on its own how it will. And whether we fuck, okay.
And this person could be on step number 1 with everybody. It was like, you know what? Well, we started number 1, but you're not the one, so number 2.
Yeah.
And we're still doing that for everybody else, number 1. We're not trying to find anybody else on level 2.
That works too for people, but that won't work for me.
Right, but I mean, I like your the way you describe that about being formulaic too, because just the same way I'm on number 1, I'm on number 2, whatever. You're right, though. At what point is it really going to ever be about love? Because it doesn't really unfold in a natural way. Because it is step by step. Here are the milestones, and you have to meet this milestone before you get to the next.
In full transparency. So I've had that mindset for at least 5 years. And
was that your Instagram? No,
it may have been. No,
what's your Instagram friend? Shut yourself out.
Leather pants. No.
At leather pants, y'all. Y'all hear that?
No, but really and truthfully, that's how I have learned to, I guess in my late 30s, I have learned how to communicate love. Is through fucking.
Oh.
Yeah. That is my way in which I communicate, hey, I like you in that way. As opposed to, this is February, flowers, candy, soft music, long walks. This is Atlanta, we don't have a beach, but long walks in the park.
But you know what? I recognize that because I've always had the feeling that, and I'm coming from a different side. My expression that sex is the expression of love, as opposed to I'm having sex because I love you, right? What I'm saying is sex is the ultimate end game for the fact that I am connected and love you.
The penultimate, say that.
The penultimate?
Yes.
I'm just saying that's how I look at it. So not too dissimilar. May come from different angles, but I think that the end game is exactly the same, where I do look at, like, if I'm having sex with you, that means I love you, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not the type who's having sex with people because I want to have sex, right? So there is that connection there. Now, that is not absolute.
According to the ancient Greeks, there are 8 types of love, and as we continue our series in the upcoming weeks, we'll share them with you, beginning with Eros. Romantic love. Eros is named after the Greek god of love and fertility. Therefore, it is usually associated with romantic, passionate, and physical love. It is an expression of sexual passion and desire. We'll be right back after these messages. Listen, I know you've been thinking about starting a podcast, and trust me, I am tired of hearing you think about it. And this ad is too short for me to explain telepathic abilities to you. But what I will tell you is that you can do it for free and be as cheap as you are and as cheap as you want to be. And Anchor has the tools for you to do so creatively. Now, as soon as you submit, your friends can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever they prefer to listen to the shit. And you can make money on a little thing called listenership. So just get to it and download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started. I just had a moment with myself because as you were saying that, I was thinking, but that's so sad. But I realized that that's my stuff coming
rejection,
up.
Right. Yeah, and I'm actually interested in why you would see that as being sad.
Because I don't see sex as a final destination of an expression of love.
Okay.
I guess that's why, because I feel that there's so much more, and I think actually of it as that maybe the sex part is so much less than what I believe the depth of it, can hold in terms of being in love and the level of love and experience of love that you could have with an individual.
Right. Let me clarify then, because I think that you and I are actually saying the same thing.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is, unless I have that level of connection and love with you, I'm not having sex with you.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
That is the difference. Is that for me? That's the queen piece there. You're completely in, and I'm all completely connected to you on all levels.
No pun intended.
If we get to that point.
Well,
so sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that. So, I mean, I don't think that we're saying things too dissimilar. It's just that, that's a reserved thing for me.
Well, to both of your points, and I'm going to quote another one of my favorite movies, Love Jones, physics, the shit ain't. So
exactly.
to both of your points, if that's the case, then how do you measure love? How do you measure receiving that love so that you can get to, I guess, the level of full transparency?
I would love to say that I have an answer for that, but I don't. Because I also think that it's an individual thing. There may be different people, and your connection to that individual person determines that, right? At least for me. I mean, I don't have anything that I say, this is what I'm looking for, right? It more happens that it typically just falls in my lap, right? And then you can feel it.
Can it be love if it's measured?
I don't know. I people always ask, why do you love me? I don't know if you can answer that, because just like you said, that now I'm actually having to measure it and having, you're rationalizing it, and I don't know if you can. Are you able to separate, the rational part of having sex with somebody for the fact that having sex versus the emotional part? I mean, can we just have sex without the emotion? Are you ever able to do that? And that was a good question that you asked before. And I know myself, I would have to say 99% of the times, no.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that make me a whore?
No.
You need to change your Instagram name.
What I'm saying is that this is about me. My response is about how I feel about that. I'm not putting a judgment on it that's good or bad. What I'm saying is maybe this is something I need to explore more, because sometimes sex may be just about sex. It may not necessarily have to be the end game. That's why I said earlier, it's not absolute.
Right.
But as you said, your emotions. Some people are different. Some people know how it affects them emotionally. Some people have different levels. So, as you said, it's an individual. It's not an absolute for across the board. You personally know for you what your level is for sex and what that means for you emotionally. Other people, they know that once they engage in it, there's no emotion altogether. They can do it many times over and there's no emotion. So that's them. But
here's a question.
Can I jump in there? I was going to say, which is why I think having conversations about that is important. What does this mean to you? This is what this means for me. Does it mean the same thing? If we are choosing to have sex, whatever, what is the meaning of that? So we make assumptions that other people think the same way that we do about sex. And then we're disappointed when we find out that that's not the case, or hurt or pained, instead of having a conversation, maybe on the front end, just to see where are we? Like, what's up? Like, then I know, like, I'm not making an assumption about what this means for you. You're telling me what this means for you. And then I can determine what might be the right thing for me.
And don't think because I'm asking you that fucking question, I'm asking you for your hand in marriage.
Hello? Period. It's just an honest, open conversation.
Clarity.
It's a dialogue.
Clarity.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah,
That's all I'm looking for.
Now, you all know that there are people that unfortunately are not at that, and I agree with you 110%. People are not at that emotional maturity level sometimes. So regardless of whether you put it out there, I honestly believe they're going to automatically translate that particular action into what they conceive or perceive as love.
No matter how many times you say it.
Yeah.
That's fine, and I'm not getting ready to be with nobody that ain't clear on that.
Man.
So if you're not clear on it, that's it for me. Period. Like I'm not. You need to have for me to us to do any like you need to have some clarity about at least be to the point where you can communicate and have some self-awareness around what this mean and what it don't. Because I did that in my early 20s.
Yes,
I don't need to do that again.
Amen. The question I was thinking about was, have you ever gone into a situation where you wanted it to be just sex, or you thought it was going to be just sex, and then once the sex happened, you're like, oh, no, the chemistry is that way, and you're like, oh, no, I can't proceed with you because I can't do this without there being some other stuff that I know is going to come up for me.
So there's different aspects and elements of sex, right? There's a physical aspect of it. There's an emotional aspect of it. There's a mental aspect of it. So I'm like, are we talking about just the physical chemistry? Because sometimes emotional and mental chemistry together can outweigh whatever physical chemistry there is or lack thereof. Because
That's
you
a
are
good
emotionally, mentally connected with someone, it sends the physical to another place where it actually may not be.
So I'm thinking of it in the sense of you met somebody who had mutual physical attraction, right? And that's all you knew because that's where you were at in terms of your level of engagement. And you realize that this person is probably not going to be able to facilitate anything more than what this is. Like, have you had that experience?
Yes, Lord. and let me say this. I have. And I'm of a mindset that before it gets to that level, I'm going to cut it off. And I'm going to cut off my emotions attached to that. And that's...
You're going to kill that baby.
Yeah. Figuratively and literally. But yeah, so I legitimately think that
I'm saved.
My words.
Yes, yeah. I legitimately think that you can get to a point where you become automated and automatic as opposed to a feeling being. Which is probably sad, but that's my experience. That's my transparency.
Okay, so somebody asked a question. One of the viewers asked the question is, if you've been single, right, how do you then prepare for being in a relationship when you've been single for so long? And what you just said made me think of that, because if you're automated, right, and you've been doing the thing the way you've been doing it, and now you meet somebody that you might want to be in a long-term, how do you make that transition?
Can I ask a question, though? Because I'm still stuck at the automated part.
Okay.
To me, the automation is to achieve a purpose, right? If you really don't care about love, then why do you need a system to keep it out?
Ooh.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that I'm stuck there. Because your follow-on question is a little bit different, because it determines, if you're saying how do you let love in, the thing is you've been working so hard to keep it out with that system. I'm not talking all systems, just saying you have this automated model. You've worked so hard to keep it in.
Yeah.
How do you dismantle that automation? Is where on the other side is a different thing, because we're not talking about people who have built in a defense mechanism, right? So if we stick with the first part, how do you disable this system that you've set up to protect yourself? And it could be not just you, but anybody. How would one go about that?
I think you start with yourself and loving yourself, and not trying to love somebody outside of yourself.
Preach.
You teach that to yourself. You experience that with yourself. It's you and you. Like that starts with somebody else from the outside. Like I'm not preparing necessarily. I'm preparing, learning how to love myself so that I could communicate to somebody else how to love me.
And bring somebody else into that experience.
And bring somebody else into that experience that's already happening.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
A friend of mine, I was telling him, I think it was December 30th or something like that. And I was, telling him that I want to start dating again. And he said, make sure that you choose people who have done the work, because if you don't, you're going to give yourself a lot of hell. And so, again, full transparency, to answer your question, the automation is a defense mechanism. And to Nick's point, to knock those walls down, you have to do the work on yourself in order to legitimately be free enough to love someone else.
And that last part that you said about doing the work, that might be the answer to the question overall. Whether you have a defense mechanism or not, you just got to put in the work to make sure you're ready to be open.
But we're in an instant world now. People don't want to do work. We want it right away. Isn't that the way we live today? Instant.
Yeah, I agree.
If I could shout, I would.
Well, do they want it?
Well, if you want that microwave relationship, you got to take what comes with that.
Exactly. It's going to be all soft and...
Reheat.
Come on. And every last one of y'all got a microwave and use it.
Listen.
But, I think you're right, though. You're right. If you want that microwave experience, you're going to have to learn to accept that that's what comes out.
No depth, bitch. No depth.
You need that 4-hour slow cooker. Ooh, then you might actually be able to see a little bit more of how it's shaping up before you actually put it in your mouth.
But see, going back
Pun
to...
intended.
Wait a minute. We need to... Okay, then. Calvin. Okay. Did you write that before the show? You waited on that moment. I'm here for it.
No, it's a good point, though. I mean, and I think that's one of the things I would say is that, sometimes things do fall in your lap, and you just got to be in a position to accept it. Right. And that does require you to work on yourself so that you can be in a position.
Well, talking about acceptance and also compatibility in regards to relationship, one of the viewers had a question in regards to being in a relationship with somebody who has a job as a go-go boy and also an OnlyFans account. They want to know if this is a situation that they should accept, and is this a modern, 2020 relationship? If it's possible to have a monogamous relationship with somebody who again has that a go-go boy job as a night job and OnlyFans account.
So. The word monogamous, I have problems with, simply because you're already sharing, even if the other people are just watching and not touching. I think that relationships of all types can work, because I think that all people need love, right? And some people, they do use their bodies to make money, right? More power to them. But the question is, are you emotionally ready to be able to handle the fact that you're sharing?
And that's a no for me.
Yeah.
Because you are sharing, no matter how you look at it.
Oh, I'm very clear about that. I'm clear.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like I can actually answer this question for the I mean, that would be something that needs to come from them. Any answer that I have to this question is going to be based on my own values, which may not be this person's values.
That's so. So you would have to say that they need to assess
for themselves and come from within themselves about what matters to them, not from what they think other people would say or how they will respond or say what's appropriate or what's correct. That might not. But
that's an interesting point to what other people may say and how much that weighs on people's choices to be with whom they are or who they are not with.
I think Nick said the operative word for me. What are your values, right? Because if your values are telling you this is not a good thing, then it's not a good thing, right? But if you have a certain value structure where this is allowed, then maybe you proceed and check it out. But you're right. It has to do with your personal value system, you know?
Yeah, and I would imagine how you see yourself as an individual, you know, kind of shapes what type of scenario you see yourself in.
I don't know if it's just the way you see yourself, because you said it earlier. The people around you, if you're worried about what they're going to say and think, that all comes into your value system.
True. Yeah.
You know, it's a bigger thing than just all the stuff that we're saying here is all plays a part of it, which is why it's such a complex answer. Is because there is no simple way to look at it. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it may sound like a simple question, but it involves a lot of thought about who you are.
Right.
You know, and what you believe in, how you are socialized, and this, that, and the other, and so forth, and so on. And we can go on for a while.
Well, I would imagine the fact that this is something that is top of mind for them, it probably means that it doesn't sit well. Like if you have to ask.
Yeah, that's true.
That's telling.
If you're
very
asking
true.
about that, then...
To
that's a good-
piggyback off of something that Nick said, the way my anxiety is set up,
Period.
couldn't do it.
Period. Okay, I'm gonna be on child. Listen, going to see the psychiatrist, which I'm here for. Go, hey, listen.
Amen.
Destigmatize mental health and going to see a psychiatrist.
The ancient Greeks defined pragma as an enduring love. In other words, it's almost the opposite of eros, sexual love. Eros tends to burn out quickly because of its passion and intensity. However, pragma is a love that has matured and developed over a long period of time. The conversation continues when we return.
Hey guys, I'm Joseph, a member of the board, which is what Akil refers to as his community of friends and supporters.
We all have something valuable to give. And sometimes it's as simple as giving someone else a reason to live.
On behalf of all the board members, I want to thank you for listening to our podcast. Akil's success is our success, and we want you to be a part of the community we are building,
It's not enough. It's not enough.
because you are the very foundation we must build it on.
It's not enough to tell people that they matter. We have to show them. Like my friends showed me.
So tell a friend, leave a review, and keep in touch. We want to hear from you because it all matters, just as you do.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had so many questions. Like, how do I record an episode? Where do I find background music? How do I get to show my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? And where do I find advertisers? The answer to every one of those questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and 100% ridiculously easy to use. Personally, I like that Anchor allows me to focus on being creative while they handle all the less interesting details about producing a podcast. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Is it possible to be in a relationship as a bisexual man with a heterosexual woman?
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are people asking these questions? Because the question is, are you acting on? So the question is yes, but are you asking the question because you're participating on the other side? you're not monogamous with your person in relationship with.
And he hit it on the nail, because when people ask those questions, I'm always thinking about you making a commitment to somebody shouldn't have anything to do with what your sexual orientation is, if you have decided.
And I guess I assumed monogamous was in here. So that was my absolute yes, of course. I mean, you can have a relationship with any other human being, right? But you're right. What are the other issues that are surrounding this relationship? And I mean, I agree with you when you said that it should not matter. The question I have is, why does it? Because it sounds to me the question is worded in a way that it does matter. Right.
What is that communication like, though? That's what I would want to know. What is that communication like between the person and their partner, his partner?
Do they
Some
know?
of these relationships, when some of these relationships began, both people were straight. And somewhere along the line, one became bisexual.
Or
I'm just saying.
some of them,
Okay.
some of the situations start off with the person being gay.
No, but if we're thinking about sexuality as fluid anyway, then anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it's a great question, because I do think that it goes back to that whole value system thing. But I also think that the little wrinkle for me is, if you're concerned about the other person's sexuality and whether or not you're going to be comfortable with them, that may be one of those red flags that says maybe this might not be the right route for you to go through right now. And there may be some more discovery that needs to happen on your part about what you're comfortable with. And that changes over time. You may be comfortable with it now and not 2 years from now. Maybe the other way around, where you're not comfortable now, 2 years from now, you're ready. I mean,
Hence
But
communication.
they should leave that. But they should communication. So this should not have it to a point where they're making decisions for other people. Meaning that, well, I'm going to deal with this on my own and think I'm going to fix it. And as you said, 2-3 years on the road, then it's something that's bothering or creating issues in a relationship. And then they're wondering what's going on, what's the problem is. And you didn't tell me about this 5 years ago.
exactly.
I could have decided what I wanted to do with this 5 years ago.
Yep.
But now, here we are.
Two kids.
Yeah, we could have had this conversation before we started. You know,
sure.
But yeah, that's a good point.
But I think it's. I think for some people it's a little bit more complicated, because a lot of people. I mean, denial is a very powerful thing. First of all, and sometimes people are not able to be honest with themselves about what they really want, right? And they bring other people into their confusion, that they haven't really admitted that they're confused. And then 10 years later, you're talking about, I'm bisexual or whatever it is. And I think that's unfortunate. But I don't always think it's a situation where the person necessarily meant to be deceptive, but they were trying to do something that they thought that they should.
Yeah,
Because-
I agree with you on that.
So it's terribly unfortunate for the other person on the other side of it, because, I feel that pain for the other person who's like, I gave you 5, 10, whatever years of my life.
It's a well-documented scenario, right? But going back to the original question, I think if you just look at what that question is for on its surface, you have to decide whether or not you're comfortable moving forward with that. Because just because you may be bisexual doesn't necessarily mean you're going to sleep with somebody else. So that really doesn't matter at all. For all intents and purposes, with that relationship, you're just another straight man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It only becomes into play if there is going to be anything external to your relationship.
And to that point, I recall a story that someone told me, who was a guy who was in a relationship with a woman, and he said that it was only after some time in the relationship with her is when he realized that he knew he was bisexual, but what he thought was that he was more leaning towards women than men. And then after being in a relationship with her, he realized I could live without being a woman, but I can't live without being with a man. And he said he would not have known that had he not gone through the experience of being, in that long-term relationship with her. So, what do you say to that? I mean, it's that was his journey in his reality, you know?
Yeah.
I think there was an element of self-discovery, but he, I hate to say he used his partner, his female partner, to figure out that he didn't want to be with women. How does that make that okay? Like, I think that's bullshit. I call bullshit on that.
But back to your point about, you said earlier, Akil, is that not everybody's intentionally deceptive about it, though. I think that in this case, it may have been something where he thought he was going in the right direction and realized it's not working.
But he knew, and the question is, did she know?
And that's
in the
a good
beginning?
point. Because now it goes right back to your point about communication again. Did they have this conversation before so that this was even known as a possibility? Did she even know that he was bisexual?
Which then, to pull that out a little further, are these conversations not still very much so taboo because of social issue and how we approach gender and sexuality anyway?
Ooh, we are not going to solve this today.
No, but I was like, let me pull it out a little bit too.
No, because I mean, I think the good thing is that we can have discussions about them so that everything's just not in the dark anymore. But the problem is, for certain people, it will always be in the dark. They won't discuss it. You know, it'll just be the aftermath of whatever has happened.
Well, reflect back to the Insecure episode where
I was thinking about that. I think. Yeah.
Which one?
Where Molly was dating the rental car guy, and she found out that he had one bisexual or gay experience, and she stopped dating him because of that experience. And she had the same experience, and he was okay with it. So at what point, do you call bullshit on some of the stigmas behind those scenarios?
And I think that highlights why some people are afraid to be that honest about certain things, you know? And the other side of it, too, is, you know, when people say, well, you never told me this, you never told me that. I think there lies there's a dual responsibility there on the person who should have shared it with you, but also how did you show up? You know, did you create the space for that truth to be discussed with you? Did you show them through prior actions that they could have that conversation with you? Did you create a safe space for their heart for them to open it?
That's a word.
Yes, sir.
That's the word. I need a text for that.
Yes. Yes.
No, because I think you got to look at the whole, you know, picture. There's a lot of dualities and these realities that materialize.
You know, along that same lines, I mean, I do think that there are certain people who get into a relationship thinking that it's all about them in terms of like the other person has to do this for me without realizing that they have a responsibility in that relationship as well.
It sounds like some codependency.
But I'm just talking. There are some people, and I'm going to label it as selfish in this case,
Narcissism.
All of it.
where they don't realize that for it to be a loving relationship, that there is something that they have to give as well. They always think that you don't love me, but they never think I need to love you.
Oops. Well, see, listen, that behavior sounds like something that would show itself in other ways, like pretty early on.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I think so, but I think that people are really good about not seeing red flags. Those red flags will be flaring up, right? And they just say, "Ooh, look at those pretty colors."
Not seeing them or ignoring them when they see them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. But you know, I only brought that up because of the previous statement. There is that does happen. You know, people, you know, they get to the point where I'm chasing you, and so I have to do all the effort.
Right.
Where it really there should be some kind of reciprocal connection.
I don't believe in that chasing thing. I don't have time for that.
You got to say more about that.
I just believe if you start doing the thing that you don't want to continue doing in the beginning, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, listen, I think I wrote something on Instagram or wherever it was, and it says something along the lines of, you know, what you have to chase will never quite be yours.
Exactly.
And, you know, that's...
You will constantly be chasing it.
And is that the experience of quote unquote love that you want?
So what's the difference between chasing and showing interest? Showing strong interest.
For me, that chasing means that you're putting in all the effort and the other person's just still running.
Right. I think of it the same way. That chasing is one directional. Okay? Meet me. We gonna meet fake like we gonna meet. We not going no.
I'm waving over here to show interest. Are you coming over or not?
No. Period. Like
That bitch never even looked back. Yeah. So,
but I think it's a good point, though. I mean, I think that we do have to temper what level of effort we put into how far we go towards establishing these relationships. Because at some point, you do have to realize that either the person's incapable of giving back the same level, or they're just not interested. You know,
or you're an option for them.
What's that? Oh yeah. Ooh, that part. Oh, I forgot about that. Ooh.
But you also know when it's reciprocal, right? If you're having to ask questions about that, like, and I use the word reciprocal intentionally. It doesn't always have to necessarily be equal, but you know that it's reciprocal. Like with where the person is, we're given the same amount, even if it's not literally the same amount with what I have to give right now with what you have to give. But like, is it reciprocal? And if you're having to ask about that, if you're unsure about that, probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
No, I think that's a point because you started off by saying you know when it's reciprocal. I don't know if some people do. I think that because they have this whole want, there's this I need to have this in my life. I'm going after them. That they don't know.
See, I had clutched my purse. I just felt like somebody breathed on the back of my neck.
Have you never met people who are at that level of obsession where it doesn't even matter what you say to them, they so in love with you that they don't see that you're not in love with them.
That's that kind of love that the bluest eye was talking about, right? There was a line in there that said, "There's no gift for the beloved." That's a thing, right? Like the person that loves you in their love because of how corrupt it is. There is no gift for the beloved. That you need to sit with that. Yeah.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
You know, for some reason, I wish I had a voice like Akil. I would legitimately sing this. It could all be so simple.
Yeah.
But you rather make it hard.
That song right there. Can I tell you, when that song came out, I sat and I probably played it like 20 times in a row because it at that point in my life, I was going through a major breakup. And it basically was one of those moments where it helped me along the road of saying, I see exactly what it is that I've been wanting to say to you and get from you. And I see where I went wrong. Because the reciprocity was not there.
Yes,
that's that word. But that seems to be like such a universal experience too, because I too have listened to that song to get me through some stuff. But it's so real, and like I literally sent that to an ex of mine, like while we were going through that, because I struggled to communicate the language. I was like, I have all of these feelings, but I don't have
the language.
I was struggling for it and grasping for it, but it was like it kept falling short with that too. And so I heard that song, and the song came out when I was in like maybe third grade. This happened well into my adulthood. I knew all the lyrics to the song, okay, but I got it. It hit me a whole different way, but it seemed like it's such a universal experience. Like,
Yes, sir.
It's real.
It came out at a very pivotal time in my life.
That's how you know a good song, though.
Right.
Exactly.
Timeless.
Because
timeless.
One of my favorite lines from any movie was had Julia Roberts. What's his name? Oh my God, I cannot remember. Why?
Pretty Woman?
No.
Closer?
No. Anyway, she's running through trying to find this man who she's been in love with for forever. And her best friend is on the phone going, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm chasing him." And he just straight up asked her, "Well, who's chasing you?"
Oops.
I really want to shout, Gary.
And I don't know why I can. It's such a simple name for this movie, and I cannot remember. But that was one of those moments. Remember, I'm always talking about me being self-aware.
Yes.
There are moments like that hit you that force you to actually say you need to reflect. And that moment, it hit me hard because I was having that feeling. And shoot, you think I called anybody the next day? Like, I'm not chasing you no more.
Well, one of our
I changed my pattern real fast after hearing that line.
One of our listeners says that he fell in love with somebody in a relationship, and now he's struggling with those emotions.
Yeah, I've read a great article about that. This woman, but it was very much like she knew that she was going to be the third piece, and she was so sure of herself, and she's like, yes, I'm okay with this. I don't have to be bogged down with that whole marriage crap, and I still get him, right? Until she realized that she didn't. All the moments when there's special days and he's with his wife instead of her, you know, she finally came up and straight out said, well, your emotions don't always keep up with your head. So
that's true.
And I can imagine what that's got to be feeling like. And because just reading her article about it, where she's describing the process that she went through of being empowered at the beginning and feeling really butthurt at the end. And it was all her decision. And she knew it was her the entire time.
You know, a lot of this stuff kind of makes me think about, like you said, who's chasing you?
Yeah.
That idea, but also when you think about, pursuing somebody to the point where you have left behind your integrity to do it, that is not an act of love towards yourself. And when does that start to matter? When does that start to take precedence, right?
Yeah.
In your search for love and relationship and contentment and connection. How you do it, if you're in a healthy relationship with yourself, how you do it has to be in a way that feels good to you, right? That honors who you are and what you have to bring in any of those situations, and that you are worthy of everything that you want and everything that you're chasing, to a point where you know that you don't have to chase it. That you could stand in that truth and allow it to find you. I think that has to be a place to get to, right?
Go ahead.
Such a conundrum. It's a place to get to, but yet it's finding you at the same At the same time, like you get to the place where that thing can find you.
Yes,
you have to get there.
You have to get there.
So, just like you said about losing your integrity, the movie is called My Best Friend's Wedding. By the way,
okay.
That's exactly what's happening to her in this. Is losing her integrity to get that one thing, right?
And then the other thing is, if you had to lose yourself and you got it, let's say that happened, well, what are you going to do with it? After you got it.
And I also asked the question too, and take the scenario of like you were able to steal him away, right? What's to keep him from doing that again to you?
Same thing to you.
And it's, if it was easy enough for him to do that with you, then it might be just as easy for him to do with someone else.
Right. And then what about when you realized what you stolen wasn't worth being stolen?
Ooh.
What if you were attracted to stealing it but not having it?
The chase. No, it's over.
The one directional Jay.
Oops.
Gary, I need a fan. I need a church fan. Oh my gosh.
You're going to have to get this mouse pad.
Listen.
Lord.
I often wonder, and I heard this yesterday. Good show, by the way. If you guys watch Sex Ed on Netflix, very good show.
Amazing. I love it.
Very well written, very well acted, so on and so forth. And there was a message that connected with me yesterday, and one of the characters said, "I see you. I see you for who you are." Like, that's what I believe. We're talking about love. That's what I believe is the baseline for love. I see you for who you are. I accept it, and I want it anyway. That to me is probably one of the most profound statements I could ever say to someone. I see you for who you are, and I love you anyway.
That's beautiful.
I'm all about that. I mean, I think I agree that that's the ultimate right there.
I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that too, because I'm thinking about like, see it for what it is, see you for who you are, including what people might consider your flaws or your imperfections, and you're still just as valuable to me as if those did not exist.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people are afraid to show themselves fully.
Yeah, but sometimes, as we said earlier, Keel said earlier about creating that space, being able to express the fact that I see you no matter what may be enough for people to be able to get to the next step about being able to open up more.
But also, too, I think, too, is also where they're coming from, too. So if you're in the past before nobody sees you many years over in multiple relationships, family, whatever, it's hard for somebody to, even if somebody's giving you a space, you're still fearful that if I show you myself fully, the reaction I've been getting from everybody else, it's going to repeat itself.
Yeah.
Even though
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I think that part has, well, to me, signifies that you still have work to do with you, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
when you come to
definitely.
a space when what you see in you is paramount and primary, then all the other stuff has to take precedence to that. It's like, listen, this is who I am, and I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so because I love it, you could choose whatever you want to do with what I show you.
Right.
But I'm not going to let you rejecting me break me.
Ooh.
That's why I think the line in Beloved with Oprah and Danny Glover's characters, where he told her at one point in the movie, he's like, it's always been you. You are your best thing, right? And if you understand that you are your best thing, give a fuck about what anybody else is able to see with that. If they either see it or they don't see it, that's on them. But as far as what you have known and that and being and sitting in that truth, I think that has to take precedence. It has to.
I was listening to someone else kind of talk about this similar concept, and they mentioned that it's like putting something so valuable in shaky hands. And so what does that mean? It's in shaky, it's not state, like you would give somebody else that much power
To decide.
to decide
How you feel about you.
Like it's in shake. You can't trust that.
Yeah.
You are literally, that's the best thing you got. Like,
Yeah.
when you get that,
When you get that.
you got it.
I love it. That's awesome.
Listen, I just want to say I love all of you, and thank you so much for showing up, because see, that is an act and an experience of love when you show up for each other. And I just want to thank you guys. This friendship, this group of friends in a circle that we have created, and the relationships that we've collectively created with each other is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful experience of love that I'm happy to have and to share with everybody who's listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you too.
I'm Akil Johnson, the poet god. Thank you for listening.